Back in 2011, a real battle of titans went down in the American heartland. Now, this wasn't a war between countries. It was a war between a river on a continental scale, and 100 years of human engineering that was built to tame it. This is that story, a story of water, concrete, and one truly impossible choice.
To really get what happened here, we have to start with a single, pretty staggering number, 41%. So, what on earth does that represent?
Well, that's the chunk of the entire continental United States that drains into this one single river system. Think about that. We're not talking about just any river. We're talking about a genuine force of nature that pulls in water from the Rocky Mountains all the way to the Appalachians. It's this immense, powerful system that we, as humans, have tried to control.
And that, right there, is the setup for this historic flood, our long, really ambitious attempt to, put this giant in a box.
So how do you even try to contain a river this massive? Well, you build. You build an absolutely astonishing amount, over 5,800 kilometers of defenses. This system was, for all intents and purposes, a great wall of water. It was designed to keep the river in a nice straight channel, protecting farms, towns, and cities. But in creating all this protection, it also created something else, a really dangerous illusion that we were in total control.
And this gets to a really dangerous paradox called the levee effect. You see, the levee makes people feel safe. So what do? They build homes, businesses, whole communities right in the river's natural floodplain. But that false sense of security means that when, not if, but when those defenses fail, the damage is just exponentially worse than it ever would have been.
And in the spring of 2011, this exact scenario was about to be put to the ultimate test, because a perfect storm of conditions was starting to brew.
It was just this relentless 1-2-3 punch. First, you had a heavy winter snowfall that completely saturated the ground. Then, a super fast spring melt sent this huge pulse of water into the system. That was followed by record-breaking rainfall in April. And then, to top it all off, these massive thunderstorms just parked themselves over the Midwest, dumping water for days. Each step just piled on top of the last, creating a flood of truly historic proportions.
But, this disaster wasn't just Mother Nature's doing. Human factors played a huge part in making a bad situation so much worse. Deforestation got rid of the natural sponges that soak up water. Compacted farm soils couldn't absorb anything. And all the concrete in our cities, it just funneled every single drop of rain directly into that swelling river system.
So with the river swelling to these unimaginable levels, the system we'd spent a century building to contain it, well, it finally reached its breaking point.
15. That's the number. That's how many federal and local levees just gave way under the immense pressure. The Great Wall of Water had been breached.
And the impact was absolutely devastating. We're talking 2.5 million people affected, 25,000 homes damaged or completely destroyed, $2 billion with a B dollars in lost crops. Major cities were swamped, and crucial infrastructure, everything from oil refineries to railways, was shut down, sending these shockwaves across the entire national economy. Yeah, this wasn't just a big flood. Experts called it a 1 in 100 to 1 in 500 year event. This was a flood so massive, so powerful, that it pushed our engineering and our whole philosophy of controlling rivers past the absolute limit.
And that's what pushed the people in charge into a corner. They were suddenly faced with a truly impossible choice.
The question was this: you've got a literal wall of water moving down the Mississippi, and it's threatening to completely swamp two of America's most important port cities, Baton Rouge and New Orleans. What do you do? Because one thing was for sure, the levees they had just weren't going to be enough. The only answer left was a piece of engineering called a diversion spillway. You can basically think of it as a massive, engineered safety valve. And the concept is brutally simple. You open a gate, and you intentionally flood one area to relieve the pressure on the river, hopefully saving another. So, the decision was made. They opened the Morganza spillway. And that decision presented this incredibly stark trade-off. To protect the big cities of Baton Rouge and New Orleans, they would divert a torrent of water into the Atchafalaya Basin. The good news? It would save the cities. The bad news? It would also intentionally submerge an area the size of a small state, sacrificing 3,000 homes and huge stretches of farmland. And if you want to understand the gravity of that decision, just consider this. This was only the second time the Morganza spillway had ever been opened since it was built, way back in 1954. This was, without a doubt, the absolute last resort.
In the aftermath of the flood, and after that just agonizing choice, a deep reckoning began, a reckoning about our entire relationship with this mighty river.
You know, the disaster really brought two totally different philosophies into sharp contrast. On one side, you have the traditional approach: control the river, use hard engineering like levees and dams to force it to do what you want. But on the other side, a different idea started to gain ground: accommodate the river. Use softer approaches, like reconnecting it to its natural floodplains and restoring the wetlands that act like natural sponges.
This new way of thinking was captured in a pretty simple phrase: room for the river. Instead of just building higher and higher walls to fight the water, this approach is about strategically giving the river space to do its thing safely during floods, which reduces the pressure on the defenses that protect our cities.
And all of this leaves us with one final, crucial question. The 2011 flood showed us the absolute limits of control. It showed us the heartbreaking costs of the levee effect and the terrible choices that have to be made when our defenses fail. So, after a century of building walls to hold our rivers back, is it possible the real path to safety isn't about more control, but about strategically letting go?